I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands wherever you may be listening from and wherever my guests are joining from too. Sovereignty was never ceded. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Jenuine Conversations. So for today's chat, we're meeting up with Steph Say, who is the CEO of Homie. So if you're a Melburnian or if you're a blatant fangirl like I am, you might be familiar with the streetwear label that appears across Melbourne. I'm always seeing people wearing Homie, and I'm sure Steph is as well. But if you are based outside of Melbourne or not familiar with them, they are a Melbourne-based streetwear label and social enterprise supporting young people affected by homelessness or facing hardship. So in this chat, I wanted to dig into how Steph made the shift from, a traditional sort of, starting off with journalism, marketing sort of background, moving into the non-for-profit space, what it's been like working for, at Homie, building that from the ground up, and how marketing can be a powerful tool for social impact. So without further ado, let's get into it. Thanks so much for joining me today, Steph.
Thanks for having me, Jen. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Awesome. Well, I always like to start off these chats by getting to know a little bit about your career journey, like how you started, how you sort of got to where you are today. So yeah, could you give me a bit of a run through of that?
For sure. So like a lot of young people at the age of 16 or 17 or thereabouts, when you're expected to know what you want to do with your life, I had absolutely no bloody idea what I wanted to do. All I knew was that I was really good at writing. Sort of English and humanities were my good areas. So I had to make a decision, and I thought, okay, why don't I go into journalism? Because I know I'm good at writing, and I know that I'm curious about people, and I want to learn more about people. So that was the path that I took. And my first job out of uni was working at a country newspaper in Port Augusta, which is a regional area of South Australia. And after that, I moved into more of a marketing role at Port Adelaide Football Club, which is in the AFL. And that was mainly because I wanted to take a role back in Adelaide to be with my family and my friends. And I was there for probably 5 years or thereabouts, and it was the most extraordinary experience. It was so much fun. I learned so much. It was really, really high paced. But by the end of the 5 years or so, what I sort of found myself questioning was what I really enjoyed about the role, and what I really kind of connected to and felt that I was getting out of the job wasn't necessarily anything about the game or probably the typical stuff that people work in footy are more interested in, like the players and the game itself. I was much more interested in the community side of things, and this really interesting innate ability for sport to be a universal language that everybody can speak and bring people together and break down barriers. And at the time, and still are actually, the club was running some really, really impressive community programs, Power to End Violence Against Women. They had the Power Aboriginal Cup, and those were the areas that really interested me. And I thought, based on that, maybe some work in the impact space might be something that makes my heart sing. So that led me to move over to a role at The Big Issue, which is when I made my move to Melbourne. Worked there for a few years as heading up their communications and partnership space. And then over to the Reach Foundation for a few years in a chief marketing role. And then the opportunity to work at Homie came up, and I threw my hat in the ring, and I have never looked back. It's the most extraordinary place I've ever worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And in terms of the, sort of touching on sport being such a community sort of builder, like I'll be the first to admit I'm not the sportiest person in the world, but it's interesting hearing it from my partner who absolutely loves sport, AFL being one of his favourites. Yes, we totally have the Homie Hawthorn jumpers, bought those recently, shameless plug. But a big sort of factor of, what he sort of enjoys about sport is, that sort of, sense of community and building, getting people together and things like that. So it's interesting hearing that sort of perspective. Could you talk me through, how you first sort of begun at Homie, your journey there, and a little bit about Homie itself for people who aren't familiar with the brand?
Totally. I might start there just by telling everyone a bit about Homey. So as Jen beautifully introduced, we're a streetwear label and a social enterprise. We're also a registered nonprofit, and our mission is to support young people affected by homelessness or hardship to be more work ready and better prepared for their futures. For those who aren't kind of aware of what a social enterprise is, it's essentially a business that exists to do good in the world. So we operate like any other commercial business in that we have goods and services that we provide to our customers. In this case, it's streetwear, and all of the profits from the sale of that streetwear goes back to that mission. We've got a few different in-house programs we run to deliver on that mission. So we've got a VIP program which sees Homey close its Fitzroy store roughly once a month, and we invite young people affected by homelessness or hardship to come in and shop for free, basically. So they can choose 5 items of brand new clothing each for free, get their hair done, get their nails done, have a bite to eat. We've got a customization station, and it's a day of community and inclusion and connection for young people that are otherwise doing it really tough. And then we've also got a couple of other programs we run, which are education and employment programs. So we've got a Pathway Alliance, which is kind of our hallmark program. It goes for 8 months, and we invite young people affected by homelessness to come and study a Cert 3 in business with Homey. And at the same time, they can get paid work experience on the job in a retail environment, either in the Homey store or in our partner stores, Champion, Nike, Sportsgirl, Pigeonhole, AMX. And then we've also just launched a third program, which is Retail Ready. And that's a 10-week version of a employment program, again, where young people can come in and work a few shifts a week at the Homey store, get the work experience and the skills and the confidence to have something really impressive on their resume, and we support them with a transition out of that program as well to be able to go on to the next thing in their life. So that's a bit about Homey, and I guess how I ended up here was I've long admired Homey from afar, always thought it was just the coolest brand, a really, really innovative solution to some of the issues that our society is facing today. And so when the role came up and an opportunity came to join at Homey, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. I threw my hat in the ring, went through the process, and to this day, I've got no idea why they chose me, but I got really, really lucky, and it's been the most rewarding, extraordinary professional experience I've ever had. I always say to people when they ask me what's the role like, it is the weirdest job I've ever had in the best way possible. Because anybody that works in that sort of non-profit social enterprise space knows that you've got juggling 10 balls at the same time, and no 2 days are the same. I'll go from, in the space of a day, I'll go to a funding meeting and then a speaking engagement, and then I'm literally cleaning pigeon poo off of a table in our warehouse, and it's a real all hands on deck kind of working environment, and I just love it. Everyone pitches in every way that they can.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a giggle about the pigeon poop, just because the story we shared the other day, just for context for everyone, Creative Natives have paired with Homey before with some of their initiatives, and Steph said to me, just remind Ryan of the old warehouse and all the pigeons and all the flying and all the things that sort of came with that.
Yeah, it's all part of the journey.
Still a part of the journey. No, all good. And I know there's lots of pigeons out that way. I think, when we caught up, I had like a whole bunch of random pigeons fly at me that morning. Then we ended up talking about pigeons. So who knew pigeons would be a theme in our chat, but that's okay. We're going to run with it.
Just like sport, pigeons bring everyone together, it seems.
Definitely, for sure. So in your sort of experience, I guess, coming from that more kind of traditional sort of marketing background into stepping into what you're doing now in the non-for-profit sort of space, do you feel like there's any, sort of common misconceptions sort of people have about sort of working within this industry, or maybe limitations people sort of put on themselves before they kind of enter into this space, thinking maybe there's too many challenges on board, or what kind of impact they can make, I guess?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually. I think probably one of the misconceptions is that it's, I mean, to be fair, it is really hard. I'm not going to lie and say, but it is, what we always like to say at Homey is that it is hard, and it can be hard, but it's always worth it. You are sort of running off the smell of an oily rag. You've got really limited resources. Everybody is wearing a few different hats, but that real commitment to what it is that we're trying to achieve here is what underscores everybody's working experience at Homey. Everybody is rowing in the same direction, all working towards the same outcome, and are really, really committed to that. So I suppose that's a roundabout way of saying it's not necessarily a misconception that it is hard, but what I would say is it is always worth it, and you go home every night feeling really, really fantastic about the work you're doing and the impact you're making. I think probably another thing I like to talk about sometimes is something that I think everybody that works in the nonprofit or impact space has to learn over time is that it's very tempting to kind of enter this kind of industry or this workspace feeling like you want to fill your own cup, because it feels really good for you. Like I said before, you go home at night and feel really fantastic about the work you're doing. But it's really important to acknowledge that it isn't actually always about filling your cup, and sometimes that means having a challenging day at work where you're feeling really frustrated because the resources are so stretched and you've got so many things on the go at once, and really being able to recenter and remind yourself that it's not about filling your own cup, it's about the community that we exist to support. And if your cup gets filled as a result of doing that, that's a bonus. But really trying to refocus that, I think, at times is one of the challenges that we have in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I can imagine anyone getting into this space, you're going in with, all the best of intentions. But I think that's a good sort of balanced way of looking at it. And also, I guess, not necessarily draining your own kind of batteries and your sort of sense of empathy as well, like compartmentalizing as much as you can for the benefit of filling other people's cups, but knowing in the background you're filling your own because you're getting to do something that's really purpose-driven and meaningful, which is great.
100%. And I think the other misconception probably as well is working in a space like youth homelessness, for example, it is really confronting, and it is your empathy battery does start to drain, and it can be really challenging in those ways. But I think the misconception is that working in these sort of purpose-driven environments is not fun as well. And what I would say about Homey and the kind of environment that we try and foster here is that providing innovative solutions to really serious social issues is cool. It's really cool. It's empowering, and it can be a really positive experience, and it doesn't need to all be doom and gloom all the time. So that's a real focus for us, is that empowerment, forward-focused thinking, solutions-focused, and trying to stay positive about the fact that there are solutions to this issue. We just need to support the right solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that sort of comes to that sort of balancing sort of act again. If you are sort of doing it tough, particularly, facing homelessness and things like that, like I think the last thing people would ever want to feel is, sort of pitied. It's, feeling empowered and sort of, having those sort of steps in place, to be able to be sort of helped and supported. But yeah, also just, I know it would be, I've never experienced it myself, but yeah, trying to sort of have that perspective of it's not all bad, because if you live in that sort of space all the time, it makes a tough situation even harder, and even the most fortunate people can get into that kind of spiral. So yeah, no, that's totally good to hear. So in terms of, like, I guess, can you sort of think of any, really amazing sort of success stories that maybe you could sort of share with us in terms of, how the direct sort of impact of Homey's work had on someone's life?
Yeah. One story that I love to share is the story of a young person who was experiencing homelessness at a point in their life, and they actually have come in this really beautiful full circle story with Homey. So this young person was originally engaged with Homey through our Hoodies for Homelessness program. So they received one of our 1-for-1 hoodies. So in that campaign, for every hoodie that's purchased, another one gets donated to a young person who needs it. So they were a recipient of one of these hoodies. And that's how they were first introduced to Homey and got to know us. From there, they registered interest in a VIP day, and they came along and took part in this VIP session where they had a haircut, got the nails done, grabbed some fresh streetwear, and again had a really positive experience with Homey. They then went on to the Pathway Alliance. So you sort of see this thread going all the way through. They participated in our 8-month-long training and education program, and had an extraordinary experience, built so many skills, so much confidence and capacity in themselves. And then this full circle moment was they've now become an advocate for Homey. So they're a lived experience advocate, and we invite this young person to come out and speak to funders at events and talk about how Homey has changed their life, and to see that trajectory, all the way along, and is now in a space where they're really, really comfortable and so confident, stepping into their own power and advocating for themselves and their own story is, in their own words, by their own admission, they never could have imagined that they would be standing out in front of a room full of people doing public speaking. And now that confidence sort of comes pretty easily to them. So it's a really beautiful one, and we love to be able to work with our young people on that, in that ongoing capacity, and bring them through all layers of the organisation so they stay connected with us for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. And I think that's the best sort of, advocate or influencer of sorts, to sort of have, although you've got some great partnerships, I guess, going on with some cool celebs and things like that in Australia that love wearing the Homey brand. But yeah, I think sort of hearing that sort of, story directly from someone that's, benefited from all the amazing work that you do, is incredible. That's awesome. So for anyone, I guess, that's, maybe sort of in a career where, whether it be sort of marketing or sort of something else within the sort of creative kind of spaces, and they want to kind of make the step into doing more sort of purpose-led and sort of impact work, like what you do, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would say that coming from more of a commercial background is a real positive. I'm a really strong believer in, obviously anybody that works in a purpose-driven organisation is very values-driven and is led by their principles and what they feel is right and fair, which is obviously a fantastic thing. But I think coming into a non-profit environment or a social enterprise environment with a bit of an understanding of a commercial environment is fantastic. It's an added string to your bow, and approaching social enterprise, I feel really strongly about, we should be looking at it through a real commercial lens, with a commercial mindset. We should be able to compete with other organisations and other businesses with the services and the products that we're offering. It's just that we're doing something different with the profits, right? So I think, sometimes in non-profit world, commerciality can be seen as a bit dirty, and it feels at odds with our reason for existence. But I really challenge that. I think it's Homey's a really, really great example of a business and an organisation that is operating really well commercially, and it's important we operate really well commercially because it allows us to fund our mission and deliver the work that we need to deliver to support more young people. So I think, that's sort of my reflection on that, is that it's actually a really great thing to be somebody that comes from a more commercial marketing background and then move into a space where you're able to apply those skills that you've honed and refined over years into an environment that really needs people that are bloody good at their jobs to deliver on important impact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that sort of balance between, working within capitalism and all of that jazz, and being able to still sort of make an impact. Yeah, I can understand how that sort of background would really bring a lot to the table. Yeah. Yeah,
and it's funny you say that, Jen, because it's we live in a capitalist society, and unfortunately that is the world we live in, and being able to work within that system and leverage it for good, and ultimately deliver on social impact is what the space that we're working in requires.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I'm just trying to think, what was my... I'm sorry, I will totally edit this out because I'm having a brain fart moment.
Oh, good.
Let me see. What else was I going to ask?
Am my answers too long? Do you want me to be like a bit shorter and sharper? Okay, cool.
No, this is great. No, I'm always happy when the guest does most of the talking. That's always great. That's all good. I guess actually a last question I always sort of like to ask people, it's a bit cliche, but if you sort of consider yourself, if you look back on your career where you started off in journalism, do you think, a young Steph Say back, being a journalist, sorry, I've completely forgotten where you started with your journalism career in Adelaide, but do you think you would have seen yourself kind of doing what you're doing today? Like, did you think that pathway was something that you sort of envisioned or were looking to sort of aim for one way or another?
Not at all. I've never been the kind of operator that has a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, or and I've never really been clear on what my dream job would be or where I wanted to land. I'm very much sort of take opportunities as they come and see how that builds and shapes my own professional journey. And that's how I've always approached my career and my opportunities. And so, a 18-year-old me never sort of sat down and went, one day I want to be working at a social enterprise doing this, that, or the other. But I think probably in hindsight, when I look back, I think working in a really values-led and purpose-driven organisation is the right fit for me, based on the principles that I live by and the kind of how I want to spend my time and the way that I show up. It's a really good fit for me, and I can't see myself moving away from the purpose-led space for the time being. But no, it's funny, I sat down with my boss at the Reach Foundation probably a year and a half before I moved over to Homey. And he said, what do you want to do with yourself? Like, what's your next step? What are you thinking about? And I distinctly remember the sentence, oh no, I'm not interested in being a CEO, come out of my mouth. And then how quickly that changed. A year and a half later, this extraordinary opportunity came up at Homey, and I wanted it so bad. And I think that just goes to show how quickly things can change if you're not kind of tied to a very specific trajectory or where you want to be. That's that approach has always really worked for me, and it's landed me in what's ultimately become my dream job. So I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. I'll have a planned trajectory and then it changes and then it kind of changes again. But yeah. I feel like it can be something that comes with age as well. You're like, oh, I could never see myself doing, this. And then, you end up kind of contradicting yourself in the best way possible.
Totally. And awesome. I've got no idea. I mean, I know that I want to be at Homey for the foreseeable future, but I still don't have any clue where I'm going to be in 10 years. So I don't know. Maybe when we chat again in 10 years.
Yeah. I was going to say, we'll just have to catch up in 10 years' time and see where you're at. If not before then. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and, sort of talking me through some of these amazing stories with Homey. It's been incredible to hear about.
Thanks, Jen. Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, that's all good. All right. Well, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.